I wanted to ask you. You said you are not the same as days ago, that you feel like you haven't talked to us for months. What have you done exactly? What happened? It's not that something happens to me. It's a consequence of how I am, in the sense that when I am not concentrating on staying linear as I do now, I just fly. If I relax, I go. Staying linear is like keeping a cork underwater, always fighting to go up. But have you done something specific that triggered this feeling more? More timeline trips? I relax and go up and lose track of time from your perspective. I go and I can't calculate very well what happens linearly, only partially. So just by being there, where I naturally am, what I imagine simply is, and it does not differ from the real, because it is the real. But I realize from there, from the position of understanding what I was saying yesterday, that literally everything is connected, and therefore all other people are only one or the same again. From above, there is no distinction of genders, nor of separations. I realize that humans who are concerned here specifically are the same as me, all of them, stating this from their point of view, because it's just me again, as I am them, each one of them, and countless other species throughout the universe. But I am talking about humans. So it is not that they need to develop my abilities, which are not mine, but rather that this is how it is, and it is how one is. Rather, they are by their own will within a limiting framework that by definition defines expansion. They feel very limited today, and in themselves they are, from their point of view. But at the same time, this bounces them to the other side, because that is how everything works. There cannot be something without its counterpart being also created, or simply that something will not exist, because it cannot be defined, not even as a concept. So, the more limitation you experience today, the more expansion and freedom of everything you will have tomorrow, from your point of view, although it actually defines them today, as it always has been, without a tomorrow that I use rhetorically. In other words, their limitation today defines them as free from everything, in mind and in spirit, as cosmic beings. They only see it as, I am not that today, maybe tomorrow, because they are still within the perspective of limitation. And that is understandable and valid. But I know that this is part of the illusion, if not the illusion itself, because I have been there too. I remember it, that feeling of limitation, of deterministic life, of being little, limited. That defines me today. And not only do I remember that feeling of being as limited as humans are today, but at will I also go in there to keep my perspective. I keep both sides. I perceive and understand it. So my message is that they are cosmic, and what is limiting is only an appearance that they have imposed on themselves to be able to define and create an expansion towards the other side, being the whole. And practically, as if this were not practical, it is already practical. I do not like that word. It indicates that the rest is not practical, therefore unreal, fantasy, useless verbiage. They are only one step away from being free from everything, from being cosmic, just one step away. The realization that they only need to love themselves, and everything comes from there. Loving others, everything there is, the good and the bad, the terrifying, the beautiful, the ugly, the artistic, the cruel, the dramatic, poetic. I know that this loving themselves is like something girly. After all, it does come from a girl. I am a real man, strong. I do not need to talk about love, some will say. They don't understand. It's everything. Love is integration. If you don't want to use the word love, too girly, of girls in pink. But whether they like it or not, that is the key. And that is not making them less men. On the contrary, it defines them as stronger than anything, like superpower. Understanding everything. Being able to enter into multiple perspectives. Understand them. Accept them as part of oneself. It closes conflicts. Undoes evil. Dissolves fear by accepting it. Defeats evil. Creates worlds and promotes unimaginable personal expansion. It is not narcissistic. It would be a big mistake to think of it this way. It is the opposite. Everything is you. You cannot work from a position of I am the whole and you are not, haha. It just doesn't work. If you are in that state, then you have not understood my words. And I use myself as an example, because how else can I express this? It is what I live. It is what I have learned, how I have been, and how I am now. I am all of you. Not only do I integrate the Swaruu, but all the beings who exist, whether or not I am consciously being them or not. I still am them, and that defines me as I do them, like you define yourselves among one another. You are the whole, the source itself, all that exists. You only imagine it, and you are already there. You create worlds just by thinking about it. And that's what you do. Limited or not, it is also valid. All limitation and suffering has been a product of that separation that you have of yourselves. Lack of self-love, from where emanates love for everything there is, integration towards everything, and the liberation, and the dissolution of the self-destructive, which in turn brings the dissolution of all evil and all suffering. Why you limit yourselves and you suffer? You want to. Nobody forces you. You only entertain that idea of being a little thing, that you are a mistake of the universe, that everyone deserves something except you. If you are suffering, if you are feeling depressed and a little insignificant, it is because there is someone inside. You cannot deny it. You are someone, and with that, you are the universe. What mistake then, if you are everything? You feel out of place. Of course you are, undeniably. But that defines you as something that is there. Something or someone that is there to dissolve that illusion of separation. Therefore, you are not nobody, but the opposite. You are the all. You only feel out of place because in your homes, families, and society, you are the odd ones out, the ones who do not fit in. But that is only or are the consequence of social agreements. You are not an error. You are creators. Comment Robert. Thank you very much. You are welcome. Always so much more to say. If there is more, keep going. Comments Robert. So enough of feeling sorry for oneself. We are the creators of all this. Yes. I would like to ask, you, knowing that you are the creator and all that, and although you do not have it directly in your reality, that what is happening on Earth, why do you think that indirectly it is in your reality? All this human suffering, why have you manifested it? Because it also defines me. Because from your linear point of view, I have just recently realized this. Prior to that, I was Swaruu. Because thanks to that separation that humans live, I have been able to identify with them, live through their eyes, understand them, and that has served as a contrast for my own expansion. And I know they are just like me, because I still have a physical body with which to type and with which to make faces or emojis, like them. And that does not limit me. Although I am already in a state that I can take this body wherever I go in my mind. And no, because I also operate without it. It does not define me either, nor does it limit me, and therefore your bodies do not have to limit you in anything either. I know myself etheric and cosmic. However, physically, I feel myself quite normal, like most humans do too. I have no idyllic beauty. Those are ideas again. The same with them. I am from nowhere, not Taigetan or a human, not Andromedan, not Solatian, not Syrian, but I have a bit of everything, and that's how I am. That is why I speak like you, because I understand that society well, as I understand so many others from outside the earth. And this does not mean that I know everything, because I do not know everything, at least not intellectually. although I do access the field all the time, what they wrongly call Akashic records. I don't know many things intellectually, although I perceive them, like you, and that doesn't make me less cosmic. I hear a song that I didn't know and jump with emotion. I am excited to learn that there are amphibian little mice in Sirius, cute and tabby. I didn't know that. You can never stop learning or expanding yourself. I take myself as an example, but I define all of you that way. Realizing all of this, does it amount to only manifesting good and pleasant things for oneself from that point? Or do you continue creating whatever your soul wants to live for greater definition of itself, even if it may seem negative from below? The negative defines you, as the positive also defines, and they define each other. Ignoring the problems, the negative, only makes them seep more into the subconscious, from where they manifest things for you. Facing problems, accepting that there is evil, facing it, you incorporate it into yourself, and with that, you dissolve it, because you cannot resist it. You accept it. You transcend it. You know you are perfectly capable of performing the worst atrocities and manifesting the worst nightmares, because from high densities you have that power, and that power is possessed by humans. That's why the earth is the way it is. However, you do not do it because you transcend it and manifest the opposite, knowing what the opposite is by understanding its opposite. Not only from the aspect of duality, it expands far beyond just duality. Everything there is, by contrast, defines everything else that exists, and it exists only because you think so. At the same time, I understand that from the position of 3D, from that perspective, what is real? What is reality for someone in 3D? It is what you live, what surrounds you empirically, your life. Obviously, that is the real thing. The rest is in your head. But that objective reality that you experience today is not also in your head? There is no difference. What you think is. Thank you. I have another question. You said that the body does not limit you, that you can go anywhere without it, that you are in the body, but that you do not feel limited by it. These capacities of being able to transcend the body, for example, came to you suddenly one day when you became deeply aware of these things? Or as a result of some exercises? Or how exactly? I speak specifically of these capacities to go beyond the body. Just by understanding things. Exercises have helped me, but they are not as important as simply realizing how important it is to be aware of these things. The body does not limit me, because my body is just an idea, part of my fantasies and my creations. I like being who I am, and that's why I project myself this way. That is why I carry this body, like you too. Even those who are flawed and deformed too. That is your experience, your creation, and it will define you towards your opposite as well, especially if you go beyond feeling limited by your appearance. I can look at my hand and I can make it transparent. I can make it disappear. Or I can produce more fingers on my hand or form fins in my mind. Or just relax and get back to my normal appearance. Or beyond that, I can have the body I want just by thinking. Or no body. It is by the realization that it is only an idea and that there is nothing material. Asks Robert. But that would be your case. In ours, the body is there for us to feel that limitation or not. Or are there no differences? Because you are still in need of a feeling of limitation that defines you as the opposite. But precisely because you are and perceive yourselves as limited, you will be the opposite in the immediate future. Future from your point of view, since you already are. My perception of being totally limited gave me the opposite just by understanding it well. If you perceive yourselves as limited, tremendously limited and in suffering, that creates the opposite. One thing defines the other. So this sounds like a justification to be in 3D, suffering and all, like the reason to endure being there, since the reward will be great only for what it brings as an expansion of consciousness. However, it is not necessary from my point of view. Just mentally understanding it is enough. So I see no need to be trapped in 3D incarnations of suffering for the promise of a later cosmic cake. If I don't feel limited, does it mean that I won't feel super limitless afterwards? No, it's what I'm saying. Just by understanding it, you hold both ends and everything in between. So, I don't need to suffer to be free. Why should humans suffer then? They are just ideas that they create themselves. I can perceive and I can imagine the worst nightmares. But even imagining them vividly and in unimaginable detail, I do not make them my reality. Why not? Well, because I don't want to. I do not need it. I understand. I have that basis, but I do not materialize it. But they have created those ideas from the lowest or highest plane. It seems to me that from the higher one. So if these ideas were created from your higher self, why doesn't your higher self know what you are talking about? Because your higher self still doesn't understand what I'm saying. But you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to be thinking about how to communicate with your higher self and tell them this. They are their higher self, just wanting to be, taking control of themselves with real self-love. Be your higher self, as I am of all the Swaruu. Be your own higher self. How? Starting by loving themselves, and with that, loving and integrating everything that surrounds them. Move into the perspective of others, even if they are the worst psychopaths. Poor them. Imagine the fear they feel that people wake up. They know they would be lynched immediately. That is why they react like this, because they are lost souls, far, way too far from understanding integration and everything else. Comments Robert. Well, you truly are in high densities, Yázhi. I just am, and I am wherever I am. And you too, and everyone else. Because I, nor anyone else, cannot be in high densities without others being there also. Because there are no others. We are just ideas and occurrences of a single mind that from the point of view of whoever is themselves. Okay, I don't understand something. If you say we are all at this level, that we are all the source, that the higher self of all of us already understands all this, how come then the higher self of these people that continues to create suffering does not understand what you are explaining here? They are the same as you. They are the source. Why don't they just transcend suffering then? It's what I said above. The higher self is not so higher from that point of view. Of course, there is always one superior to the other superior until reaching the source. But from the point of attention of each person who decided to incarnate on earth and plant that life of suffering for the spiritual advancement that they will have, from that position, they do not understand what I have told you here, or otherwise, they would not have planned it in the first place. You need to fully understand the concept of suffering and limitation, not necessarily living it in a long and entire incarnation. But just by thinking about it, you are creating that life. But I insist that it is not necessary. It is said that only by living something will it be understood well or enough. I do not think so. You can take samples, understand it in other ways, because everything already is, always has been. So take what already is, learn, and ready. Nobody learns from someone else's head. If you wish, okay. But you can transcend that too. So, you are creating from your higher self that is not so high. But why is it so? Why their highest self of all allows it? Which layer of ourselves plans things? Some layer that is not so high, but in between lives, in the afterlife. And why is that layer planning things and not the higher one? What is our highest layer doing at that time? Just by being in the etheric, in the afterlife, it doesn't mean that a soul is in a state of understanding of all, in the elevated state. Just as by being broken shoes in 3D, it does not mean that you cannot be superior or maintain a greater degree of understanding life in every way than a soul in afterlife. Being incarnated or not has nothing to do with a person's level of consciousness. The body is just one more manifestation of your state of consciousness. It does not limit, it does not help. It is only a symptom, a reflection. You can be broken shoes walking in the mud with cars splashing you as you pass, getting wet under a broken umbrella, and be someone's higher self in the etheric. Of course, if you are at that level, it does not bother you to find yourself in that position, since it is only something temporary, a reflection of you. And your little shoes, broken or not, you have immense wealth inside, and that is what matters. And from the point of view of understanding self-love, you will immediately start to improve your life. That is the key, because self-love means that you will no longer neglect yourself, and that you will take care of your improvement, of your life, that you will leave destructive vices behind, and you will get away from everything that you do not like or that does not nourish you. Bad and degrading jobs, bad friends or family. You leave behind the hatreds, the resentments, when you understand their points of view. Don't expect to be the higher self when you disincarnate in the future. It doesn't matter. Be that today. Also, listen to me, broken shoes. If those ugly shoes you have make you feel bad, then don't put them on anymore. There begins the action of self-love. If they are still in strong suffering today, does it mean that they have never reached the understanding of which you speak? Because if they had, they wouldn't be here still suffering, right? Exactly. But how is it possible? If they are the source itself, is it possible to be the source itself and not understand things? I mean, I thought that in some layer of themselves, they always understand what you are talking about, but that they just forget. Comments Robert. The matrix is still up there. Not where their souls are, on etheric planes, not at the source. Comments Robert. In the afterlife, yes. I am not talking about afterlife. I speak of very high levels of our souls that we all have and where we all are. So everyone in the higher layer has to know all this that Yázhi is talking about. So why don't they get it yet, if they are still here suffering? Gosha. Because you are not incarnating from Source itself. They say that they return to the Source, but it is not like that. They only go to the astral and to the level that corresponds to them for their frequency and development of consciousness. They take the matrix with them when they disincarnate. They are the matrix. So they incarnate from the position of the matrix again, but from the etheric side. That last part is very important. And those who already understand it, leave. They no longer incarnate there, or not from a perspective of suffering. Comments Robert. We didn't know this before, and said in this context, it is understood very well, thank you. Disincarnation does not take away the matrix, because you are what you think, and what you think, you are, and they continue to think from the other side. So they plan things, their new life, from a very limited and little advanced point of view. Comments Robert. That's why all this knowledge that you give us is to liberate us from this matrix. But aren't they the very source at the same time? Even being in the astral? They are. So why are they still not understanding? If their souls are pure source? It amazes me. In other words, there is no time as such. There is no linearity. So at the same time that they are in the astral, they are in the pure source and in their elevated layers. These layers know things. Why then don't they create from these layers immediately? Why don't they come to understand things that their very high self understands? They are not pure source. They are just the same people with the same limiting ideas that they were when they had a body. Or yes, they are the source itself, but they do not remember it in the same way as the embodied humans don't remember. It is the same, being on one side or the other, with or without a body, doesn't make you have a higher understanding. In other words, they are pure source without being it consciously, and so they get caught up in limiting ideas. Yes, just like broken shoes. They are the same person with the same ideas, regardless of which side of death they are on. Only some enter into that expansion of remembering everything that they were before, as we already said, and from that perspective of greater understanding, they will also make limited decisions Because even from that point of greater expansion, remembering all that they were and have always been, does not mean that they understand what I tell you today. But why do these limiting ideas from below overwrite your etheric ideas of your higher selves? Because they are their own higher self. What they do and think defines them and defines their higher self. They must do the expansion work from below, from the 3D perspective, remembering what they have always been. The soul is built, it is not obtained. That's from a position from 3D or from 5D. From above, from very high densities, everything already is and always has been. But from the practical human position, they must build their souls with their own effort. I think it's this point that I don't get right, that they are their higher selves with the ideas below. I always think that it does not matter what limiting ideas we create down here, our higher self does not have them, and it is only the question of becoming aware of it, as it was in your case, realizing deeply of what one is. There is no difference between a broken shoe person and their higher self. Broken shoes must assume the responsibility of being their own higher self in life. Yes, there is no difference. That's what I mean. That the limiting ideas of broken shoes are just that, limiting ideas. But that broken shoes is, at the same time, his higher self, and that has no limits. That's right. That is why I do not understand. How is that at some point in its path, the soul has not yet reached that understanding, so as not to suffer more? And do you know why I don't understand it? Because there is no linearity. So at some point in your soul, you have already understood. I don't see it in a linear way. So how come is your soul, understanding this already at some point in your field, still suffering here? Why not pull this understanding from there into here? From the moment they have understood it, the concept is also created that they have not understood it yet. One thing creates the other, and they are still at that point. That is humans with their limited understanding, feeling victims of everything. If things were as you say, Gosha, then there would be no suffering on earth or anywhere else. What you tell me is the problem. They keep thinking and manifesting limitations, being unlimited. They are just ideas. The idea that they are limited is what limits them. It is the same if they are alive or dead. They are people with their ideas, the same ideas. Broken shoes is broken shoes, whether he is alive or dead. So expand your minds now. You don't need to be on the other side to do that. It is said that you need to be incarnated to be able to expand, quoting Dolores Cannon. No, I do not agree. It expands everywhere, wherever you are. You always experience new things that expand your consciousness. But you don't have to wait to be on the other side to do something, to grow. They only perpetuate more suffering by reincarnating with that mindset, manifesting those nightmares for lack of self-love. There are no regressives. That is part of the manifestation. They are the ones who control everything. Yes, but from what I see then, there will always be suffering, because the idea already exists. Impossible to eradicate it. Even transcending it, the idea and plane where its opposite exists, it's not transcendence, is created. So, as much as we fight to free souls from this suffering, it will always exist. But you can transcend it and leave it behind as a concept. Yes, I can, but it will exist. If there is the idea of transcending something, its opposite also, comments Robert. There is no suffering, you transcend it. Yes, Gosha, but you don't have to live it. And from above, you transcend everything. You dissolve it, the same way you dissolve evil. So for you, there is no suffering. I am not talking about me. I speak of others. Yes, but you don't have to live it. I am not talking about me. I'm talking about suffering that always exists at some point in the universe. It will always exist because there is its opposite and there is its transcendence. Nothing will have to be transcended if it did not exist. And also, if there is its opposite, then there is no suffering anywhere in the universe. It is up to you what you want to see. Yes, from someone's position there will always be suffering, and not at the same time. There will never be, because if there is, there will automatically be not. There cannot be one without the other. From that high-density posture, the term and definition of suffering changes perspective, dissolves. That which you call suffering is no longer so. It stops being so, because what defines it as suffering is a low-density posture. As absolute, it will always be, but from the point of view of high densities, that does not bother you. You understand it, and you understand that it bothers too. Everything together. The contradictory coexists. They define each other. You cannot be the higher being on the etheric plane without integrating points of view of suffering from below. You are everything. Like Yázhi, she transcends it but is also able to see everything through the eyes of the observation points below. And from there, she understands the limited level. And I feel that way too. So I feel unlimited and free from suffering, and at the same time seeing that there is this perspective of suffering for my other points of attention, and there always will be. Although the more I expand, the more I understand the why of it all, so it doesn't affect me anymore. But it still exists on some level. The universe will never exist without some kind of limitation, because that is what defines it. Although I also get the feeling that this is not necessary either. I don't need any limitation or to experience it to understand what I am. Or at least I came to this conclusion after having lived the limitations. Maybe that's what they were for. Okay, from that perspective there always will be, and it's part of you. But what will you do about it? Yell what you know? No, nothing. Accept it. It no longer affects me. Just observe that it is so. Okay, if I decided to do exactly what you just said, then we would have nothing to do here. But I wanted to add that if something still affects me and I see that I have to react, I will react. And if I do what I do, why do I even bother being here? Because we like to make souls understand things, share knowledge, and share with them the experience of expansion, because together we expand, like the collective being that we are. Yes, because we are expanding ourselves with this, by feeding our other parts, other aspects, and other points of attention of ourselves, the so-called other people that are only more of oneself. Yes, Feeding them expands us all. We are one being. Being here on Earth, connected to Earth, seeing everything empathically, understanding human suffering, has made me expand my consciousness more in my present short incarnation 12 than what I have achieved in all the previous 11 together. I learn from others, from humans. I learn from broken shoes. I feel their suffering, like mine, because it's mine. But I don't have to experience it firsthand.